See how it's slightly open as it begins the peel? And as it continues through, it squares up, and as it's coming out the front, it's square. So when you're collecting and releasing the ball's gonna compress against that face, ride along the face for a while, about half the length of this Band-Aid, and then release from it. Ride along the face for a while, about half the length of this Band-Aid, and then release from it.
Before we get started in this video, I just want to thank these people on the screen for supporting our show. If you want to support us and help bring more free educational videos like this, the link is in the description. Welcome back, Land Golf Academy members and guests. And no, I didn't go to Cancun. I was out teaching in the sun and forgot to put sunblocks. So wear your sunblocks, kids, unless you want to have a permanent t-shirt. When you take your shirt off, get a little farmer's tan. And thank you for those who did vote on the latest post. And we have quite a few people to select from. I'm just going to go from the top and let's work my way down. And then if I need to do another poll later on, I will do another poll. So keep your eyes peeled for the community post. But today we're going to be looking at Shawn Clement. And I also at the same time received a link from a viewer in the comments asking if this is legitimate. And it's from his latest upload where he swings with one leg and can hit it 350. We're going to diagnose that swing, actually show you what occurs, and look at the numbers to see how his club head speed can actually produce that long carry. So on the screen here we've got Shawn Clement's latest video where he describes hitting at 350 and actually does using flight scope. So I've cut down a few things that we can look at. Basically the meat and potatoes of what he's trying to explain, but I want you to go check out that video. It is about a 10-minute long video. I don't want to just rip it from his channel, and I want you to go and support his channel too. So do me a favor, that link is in the description. Go check out that video. But if you want to watch this first and then go look at what he says, compare apples to apples, whatever it is, just go follow your right orchard. And then we'll look at his cause and effect from that swing and describe what I see happening and how this can work for you if you do a couple of these key things. And then stick around till the end because we got that face on describing that forward shaft lean to see what actually occurs and what he actually needs to do that he might not know he is doing, and you for sure need to do if you're going to try this motion yourself.
All right, 350 yards, one leg drill, 60th year, 341. All right. So you understand that the golf swing is like a ball on a string. So the ball is the club head, the string is the shaft and the arms, and where it's attached to my hand, where I'm holding it with my hand, is my shoulder sockets. So I give this to gravity, and notice how it's drawing a beautiful circle. Notice where the low point of that circle is. So you can see how I'm going to catch the tip of the tee on the way up. Now, if I want to go farther, you see how accurate that is? So I get on two legs here. This feels like I can catch the ball on the way up. So I get on one leg, I drop that leg back. It brings my center of gravity back. Notice how my head is inside my lead foot. This foot, notice how it's pointed this way. This is so key. So my right leg feels like it's just dangling from my hip joint, and I'm using the ground to remove my right hip out of the way. So that right foot back forces my butt to swivel towards the target. This opens up this huge range of motion and gives me the ability to gather a lot of momentum. Now, the front leg, notice how I come up in the backswing? Now it can load the ground in the downswing, use the ground to get me out of the way, and then jump up as I'm flicking the tee into a somersault toward the target.
So I took down some of his numbers that he mentioned when he hit these golf balls, and let's say we're just going to do this hypothetical. You can hit 160 mile an hour club head speed, your ball speed's 167, which is basically 1.44 smash factor. His spin fluctuated, but it was about 1800 RPM. Now on paper, that is some serious distance, but only if your launch angle is in the right zone. So from about 10 to 13 degrees of your launch angle, your carry is going to increase steadily, and you'll probably max out around 295. But here's where it gets a little bit misinterpreted, because once you start launching from 16 to 18 degrees with that same low spin, your carry will actually start to drop. Now, why is this? Because you don't have enough spin to keep the ball in the air. So the ball will get up too high, but it can't stay there because not enough spin, and it will stall and actually drop. So anything above 13, now 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, you're going to start to lose yardages, specifically at the 17 to 18. So there is such a thing as too much tilt. And this is actually what I've been working on with one of my instructors who hits it a long way. His launch is too high, so we're working on getting it lower to increase that carry distance. Now, most of these indoor simulators have to model the rest of the ball flights based on physics, but not actually ball tracking in the sky when you are indoors. And when the spin is that low with a high launch, the software tends to overestimate carry because it assumes it has ideal air and also glide. So let's say it shows 295 or more carry. Outdoors, you're probably going to get about 285, potentially less, especially if there's any wind or you are at sea level. So just be careful when you're starting to mess around with your launch, and understanding that too much launch, you might start to lose distance. So the lines are up. We have got our OG Bonnie Purple right down the spine. We got the lower plane and upper plane line in mellow yellow, and that back brace line, Ivan Red, will show us any motions back and forth. And look at his footwork and look at where that. So let's get this thing playing. But I knew a guy about 25, almost 30 years ago in Colorado that would set up like this. And this was before TrackMan. This is before we understood launch angles. And he figured out a way to tee the ball up as high as Shawn does, but maybe even taller. And he would definitely tilt and just hang back and swing high. That ball would just moon high, but he would definitely hit it a long way. Now, specifically in Colorado, where the air is lighter and the ball travels about 10% further, he would just rocket the ball. So he was onto something, and maybe this is the guy. Who knows? But let's just take a look at this cause and effect. Let's start from the beginning. Now, we know he says that he gets that initial starting point on his left leg, and we can see that right foot is just dangling, but there is some weight distribution because that right foot will plant down and we start the movement back. And he did discuss this in the actual video, that he does get that weight to the right foot. So it's not necessarily a one-legged swing. There is weight distribution in all swings. Even if you put your feet together, you are still going to have some weight distribution. And you got to forgive the sun. It's just blinding me, but you know what? Could give me a little halo. But we do see, because we have that right foot back, because we're going to promote a lot of turn initially, we see the hands do stay on that lower plane line, and we do see the club veering back over here. Now, this could also be a camera angle. Maybe if it's on the foot line, we would actually see it stay closer to that lower plane line, but it is definitely working inward. Now, we also see that left shoulder not tilting as much down based on that setup, but this again is cause and effect. As we get to the top of the swing, now we start to stand up slightly. So we see in relation to the Barney Purple posture, those shoulders did come up, but in relation to his new posture, look at that spine angle and look at the shoulders there, pretty close to perpendicular. So as he is coming on up, he is not losing his back brace line, which is key. I see a lot of amateurs, when they do come up, their whole body raises up and they lose that back brace line. So he is doing this to allow himself to turn more and also get those hands and arms to have some room that he did discuss. By clearing that lower body, as he discussed, this creates, again, that real estate so he can turn and tilt. Now, the one thing that he does not do is tilt more to take advantage of this. And it could be for age, it could just be the way he swung anyway. But what he does is he remains in that posture and he flattens the club out, and he has to rely on his hands to really release and get involved right at impact. So we'll see this first move. Let's just back out and look at the triangle check here. So this is going to be a very challenging thing to connect to. So it is hard for him in this position to be that close to target, reconnect his hands to fall backwards, and then rotate around, because if that occurs, he's going to stall out his sequencing, and that's going to really affect the ground forces that he's trying to establish. So we see that arms will fall down, but they go slightly right here. So in blue, we're going to trace the hands. The hands will work slightly right of that center line. At the same time, we're also going to look at that head height with the box, and just as he said before, he feels like he goes down, and that gets him ready to jump back up. So just as I always say, if you want to jump higher in any athletic motion, jump from a standing position, you'll go X height. Jump when you go down and push up, obviously you jump much higher. So he's getting that feeling of loading the weight in so he can push back up and explode through the golf ball. And this will really help him because he is going to swing up by doing this. And because his hands are in a much higher position than they were, the club is falling down in the slot beautifully. And we can see if we extend that line, it is just ever so slightly above the golf ball, but he's going to make up for it. And this is a great position here. Now look at the triangles, and the club is going right in between that triangle. So right now he is utilizing rotation, he's utilizing down and up, and he's also utilizing some distribution that he's stored on the right side, and he's driving it with the lower body while the upper body stays back, so he can hit on this tee. Look how tall that tee is, and the golf ball's up here, so he can just launch that ball up in the sky, which gives him that pretty high launch angle. And we come on through, we can see now goes the hips will fire through. That triangle that he's formed is not collapsing in on itself, so he's able to maintain it pretty long. You'll start to see it square out right about here, so it comes to neutral. But you will notice as he strikes that golf ball, this is one frame after impact. Look at the shoulder tilt. So let's go right when he strikes it, and let's clear up those lines, and let's do a quick shoulder tilt check. So there is his shoulder tilt, and we're at 45. And if we go to the top of the swing here, he is at 30. So we see 15 degrees. Now you notice that shoulder tilt that was at 45 here. The next frame, he is already back up to 34. So he's only 4 degrees more tilt here than he was at setup. And when you lose that tilt, you are basically just turning more at this point. And you'll see, where does that club exit? So the club exits over here. That's where the club shaft is, and it continually goes, and that club head will finish below the shaft, which means there is some slight throwing with the right hand, but also that standing up and turning while releasing the right hand gets everything to finish much lower. And how much lower? So if we go to where the original planes were, there's one plane and then there is 2 planes, so you can see it is definitely working its way on that lower plane line. Typically when you see people take advantage of tilting, that club will exit much higher. The hands move straighter at impact, but because we're sacrificing some tilt and getting more rotation and our hands are catching up, and this becomes very timing oriented. So the way he sets up at the ball position, with his setup, with his weighting, with the way his body moves, and with his exceptional hand-eye coordination, this can definitely work for him. So let's just watch that face-on video of that short where he describes what shaft lean can do for him, but then take a look down at impact and you will see how much hand manipulation is required for him.
When I'm looking down here, my attention is on this side of the ball, and I'm already feeling the ball leaping off my club face. I'm collecting the ball from here, releasing the ball in that direction there. So gather and release into that picture. Going into the picture.
Okay, here is that face on. Now what we're going to do to try and make sense of all this is we're going to draw that spine tilt based on his shoulder tilt, and we can see that his hands do a pretty good job of immediately starting right in that connection zone, right in that little circle. But what we are establishing now is a pretty significant angle between your spine and also that club shaft, and this is where compensations all live. So if we take a look at that angle here, we see that it is sitting at 34 degrees. That is quite a forward press. Now, if you can sequence correctly, that'll work for you, but just keep an eye on your forward press and keep an eye on what your body does to compensate that forward press, because it has to compensate. Something will have to move to make up that spacing, because it's very hard to carry 34 degrees of forward press at impact without doing some damage. So your body will have to do 2 things. So number 1 thing we see Barney Purple will show you where most amateurs will have to do. They have to make up that gap to close that forward press so we can get the ball airborne and not break our wrists or the club as we strike that golf ball. Number 2 is we see a second change, and this is more for the long drivers that set up like this. Their center of their body will actually fall back. Now let's do this one in yellow where we see that center will fall back, and what that's doing is it's making sure your tilting changes, and by doing that your hand path escapes higher. Now what is that trying to do? It's trying to preserve you from striking the ground. So in other words, the more tilt you have, so let's say we raise this tilt a little bit higher, it's going to also raise your hands higher away from the ground because they're connected to that tilt. Now that's assuming you can keep the relation between the tilt and your hands correct. Now that is all ball position. So here we have a ball position that is definitely favoring his right side. So this is a second reason why his center of his chest will probably have to fall back to make sure it meets up with the golf ball relative to the center of him. So there's a lot of things going on here, but let's take a look at if he does make the correct changes. But just so you quickly know what I'm talking about, so this makes more sense. So we see that red circle, that's perpendicular, and we look at the green circle, that is perpendicular. So look at how those 2 X's are so separated. So you have to reconnect them somehow. It's either going to come by your hands, it's going to come by your body position. Most of us can't do the turning and tilting required to make those two lines up. So we are left with some hand manipulation down at impact to lose some of this angle. There's no way to carry that much angle. So let's take a look at what he does. What he does really well is look at that shoulder turn, and then also look at the club in relation to that turn. That shaft is nowhere near forming the tee. So we know this is a very connected swing, which is great. We see the arms and hands right out in front of that chest again, which is great because it's a lot easier to drive your body through. But now let's take a look at how he handles this forward press. As he comes on down, we can see that his center is shifted slightly back. So if we draw where the ball position is now, let's draw this in red and see where it moved. So it is closer to that center of his chest. And option number 2 is we see some increase of tilting, which then puts those hands out in connection. So let's clean up all these lines here. Let's put the tilting down and let's put the center of the tilt out in front. Now, you can clearly see there's going to be an issue here. If he's able to keep his hands connected to the center at impact, his hands would have to move here. The problem is they're going to be moving up. Now, when they move up and away from the golf ball, you're going to top the golf ball. So what has to happen? Watch this one frame. Boom, that's where everything meets. So now we take a look at the club shaft. Where's the club shaft pointing? The club shaft is pointing closer to the center of where? The chest. So this is, he's closed that gap down. So you can see that forward press is no longer there. Now, I know it's caught in between two frames, but you can clearly see the hands have to go. There's a stalling of turning and a stalling of tilting, because watch the next frame. Boom, look at the hands. They just have to release so much that they are almost parallel to the ground one frame after impact, and they're still connected to where? That center of the chest, which is connected to what? The tilting. So this is why I say this could be a very dangerous approach to try unless you have some serious hand-eye coordination like this gentleman does. And again, when you listen to him teach on that specific video, you listen to somebody that says, when I feel I swing, when I do this, I'm looking for this, it's all I. And that's great, that works for him. But when he's trying to tell you how you should feel based on him and what I feel, things get lost in translation unless you understand cause and effect, where ball position, where tilting, how your two circles need to work together to make things easier for the average person. I would highly suggest looking at your physical limitations before you attempt to do something like this. And lastly, I just want to address my intro on why I believe this is a huge misconception out there, and some instructors still believe this actually occurs, but it really does not. So the golf ball is actually on the club face for 0.00045 seconds. That's 450 microseconds. And that is faster than a blink of an eye and shorter than your fingernail. So keep that in perspective. And why this matters is because your club face is always your king, because the ball is in the face for such a short time. Wherever your face is at the moment of contact is essentially where the ball is going to start. And even in that tiny window, hitting off center, your heel, your toe, your high or low can twist the club head, which is the gear effect, and it also alters your spin and your launch, and you cannot steer the ball during contact. Now this is the problem, and this just sums up that this instructor may be a feel-based instructor, because many players do feel like they held the club face longer, but that's just the after effect of the contact of the golf ball. The ball is already gone before your follow through even begins. So why does it feel like it stays on the club face longer? Well, because it comes down to compression, it comes down to vibration feedback, and the visual lag between your eyes and the brain. They're playing catch up, so they basically see in a delay. But the bottom line is, at impact, you've already done the job. The ball is gone in less than 1/1000th of a second, and you don't control the ball flight after contact. You control it how it arrives at contact. But I hope that helps you. Go watch his channel. I really enjoy watching his personality come out. Seems like a great guy. Go support him. Tell him we said hello. But other than that, I'll see you next time.
Fairways and greens.